Stop chasing him. I know that sounds awkward. I know every instinct in your body is screaming the opposite. But hear me out. The second you stop trying to keep his attention is the exact second you become the only thing he can think about. And I'm not talking about playing games. I'm not talking about manipulation or toxic mind tricks. I'm talking about a fundamental truth about human psychology that will change everything you thought you knew about attraction. I am Liz Rose, a relationship expert, author, and researcher of emotional dynamics between men and women. For years, I have studied attraction, male behavior, emotional intelligence, and the patterns that bring people together or drive them apart. Today, I want to share with you what I have learned through my research, my professional experience, and the thousands of stories I have encountered throughout my journey. Men don't miss you when you're constantly available. They don't think about you when you're always there. They miss you when they feel the empty space where you used to be, the text you don't send, the calls you don't make, the energy you stop pouring into someone who isn't pouring it back. That's what creates the kind of magnetic pull that keeps you on his mind. When he's at work, when he's with friends, when he's lying in bed at night trying to figure out what changed. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly what to do, or more accurately, what to stop doing. That will have him thinking about you nonstop. A move so powerful, so counterintuitive, he won't even realize what's happening until you're already living rent-free in his head. Here's what makes this so effective. You won't be doing more. You'll be doing less. You won't be trying harder. You'll be trying less. You won't be chasing. You'll be walking away. And in that space, in that absence, something shifts in his brain that makes you unforgettable. Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will flip everything you've been taught about keeping a man interested completely upside down. This isn't about becoming someone you're not. This is about stepping back into who you've always been before you started shrinking yourself for someone else's attention. Here's the psychological truth that changes the entire game. Absence doesn't just make the heart grow fonder, it forces the heart to wake up. Most women believe that staying connected, staying visible, always being available, that's how you stay important in someone's life. That staying top of mind means staying in constant contact. But here's what I've observed time and again in my research and in the real stories women have shared with me. The human brain is wired to respond to contrast, to change, to things that come and go. Think about any sound you hear constantly, the hum of your refrigerator, the traffic outside. Your brain literally filters it out. It becomes invisible to your awareness because it's always there. Relationships work exactly the same way. When you're always available, always responding immediately, always there whenever he reaches out, you become part of his emotional routine. You're comfortable, sure, but comfortable isn't the same as craved. Comfortable isn't missed, because you cannot miss something that never leaves. You cannot long for something that's always within reach. And you absolutely cannot create that aching feeling of wanting someone if you never give them the space to feel your absence. This is where most women hand over all their power without even realizing it. They think being consistent means being important. They think constant presence equals deeper connection. They think that if they're always there, always supportive, always available, he'll see their value and never want to leave. But what actually happens is the opposite. Your impact gets diluted. Your presence becomes expected instead of appreciated. You fade from something exciting into something routine. And routine, no matter how good, doesn't create the kind of emotional intensity that makes someone unable to stop thinking about you. So what does create that intensity? What makes you the thought he can't shake? From everything I've studied and observed, the answer is this: strategic unpredictability in your availability. And before you think that sounds manipulative, let me be clear. I'm not talking about mind games. I'm talking about something much simpler and far more authentic. Having a real life that doesn't revolve entirely around him. When he texts, and sometimes you respond right away because you happen to be on your phone, and sometimes you don't respond for hours because you're genuinely busy doing something that matters to you, he starts paying a different kind of attention. When you're fully present and engaged when you're together, but completely absorbed in your own world when you're apart, he starts to feel the contrast. He starts to notice the difference between having your attention and not having it. And that noticing, that awareness of your presence and your absence, is what creates the pull. I've seen this dynamic play out across hundreds of relationships in my research, and I've come to understand the behavioral principle behind it deeply. The brain responds more powerfully to unpredictable rewards than to guaranteed ones. It's why we can't stop checking our phones for notifications. It's why we binge-watch shows with cliffhangers. When rewards arrive unpredictably, the mind locks in and pays closer attention. So when he can't predict when he'll hear from you, when he'll see you, when he'll have access to your energy and attention, his brain lights up every single time your name appears on his phone. You stop being routine. You start being the highlight. You become the thought he keeps returning to throughout his day. Not because you're forcing it, but because you've created the exact psychological conditions where his mind has no choice but to keep coming back to you. But, and this is absolutely crucial, this only works when it's real. When it comes from you genuinely having a life you're excited about. If you're sitting at home staring at your phone, white-knuckling your way through, not texting him while your entire emotional world is still spinning around whether he'll message you, that desperate energy will leak through. Somehow, some way, he'll feel it. The real power in this move comes from authentic detachment, from being so genuinely engaged in building your own life, pursuing your own interests, and nurturing your own friendships, that he shifts from being your whole world to being someone you enjoy having in your world. That internal shift is what changes the entire dynamic. Let's talk about something that might be the hardest thing you'll do in any relationship: taking your emotional investment back. Not out of spite, not to hurt him, not to play games, but making the conscious decision to stop pouring so much of your mental and emotional energy into someone who hasn't actually earned that level of access to your inner world. Most people hear emotional withdrawal and think it means becoming cold, distant, shut down. But that's not what I mean at all. Emotional withdrawal, the healthy kind, is about redirecting. It's about taking all that focus, all that mental real estate, all that emotional labor you've been investing in him and channeling it back into yourself. Think about your typical day for a moment. How much time do you spend thinking about him? Analyzing his last text, trying to decode what he meant? Wondering what he's doing right now, crafting the perfect response that seems casual, but also interested but not too interested. That's energy. Real, tangible, life force energy that could be building something in your actual life. When you practice real emotional withdrawal, you're not pretending he doesn't exist. You're not blocking him or cutting him off or being dramatic. You're simply refusing to let him take up more space in your head than his actions have earned. You're placing a boundary around your mental and emotional energy, and you're being selective about who gets access to it. And that selectivity, that's what creates value. Think about anything in life that has value. It's valuable specifically because it's not freely available to everyone, all the time. Your emotional energy works exactly the same way. Here's what this actually looks like in practice. He texts you. You see the notification. And instead of immediately dropping whatever you're doing to read it and respond, you acknowledge it mentally and return to what you were doing. Not to make him wait, not to teach him a lesson, but because what you were doing genuinely matters to you. You're in the middle of a workout, working on a project, having lunch with a friend, reading a book you're really into. You respond when you naturally come back to your phone, maybe 30 minutes later, maybe 3 hours later. The specific timing isn't the strategy. Your authentic engagement with your own life is the strategy. Or he suggests getting together. Instead of immediately saying yes and mentally rearranging everything else to make it work, you actually look at your schedule. If you're genuinely free and you want to see him, great. But if you've got other plans, even if those plans are just a quiet evening you'd set aside for yourself, you honor those plans. I've got something that night, but I'm free Saturday if you want to grab dinner. No apologizing. No over-explaining, no guilt, because your time has inherent value regardless of what you're doing with it. This is what healthy emotional withdrawal looks like. It's the simple act of making your own life the main priority and allowing him to fit into it, rather than constantly molding yourself around his schedule and availability. Here's what starts to happen when you consistently operate this way. His texts become more substantial. He puts in more effort to see you. He starts planning things in advance instead of last minute. He begins to understand, maybe not consciously but definitely on a feeling level, that access to you isn't automatic. It's something he needs to respect and earn. And when that clicks for him, the way he values you fundamentally shifts. But here's what matters even more than his response. Even if he doesn't step up, even if he fades away, you still win. Because you've taken all that energy you were spending on him and redirected it into yourself. You're actively building a life that's fulfilling, engaging, and satisfying, independent of whether he's in it or not. Men can sense desperation from a mile away. They can also sense confidence and self-assurance from that same distance. Both are energies that communicate long before any words are spoken. When you've withdrawn your emotional overinvestment in this healthy way, you radiate something very specific. You radiate, I'm whole, I'm complete, you're welcome in my life, but you're not necessary for my happiness. That energy is magnetic on a primal level, because it's incredibly rare. Most people are walking around desperately seeking validation, trying to be chosen, working overtime to keep someone's attention. When you stop trying, when you exist in your own grounded, secure energy, you become someone people can't forget. There is one specific moment in every romantic connection where everything hangs in the balance. One moment where your response determines whether you create intense longing or comfortable complacency. That moment is the instant you feel him starting to pull away. This is where the vast majority of women completely sabotage themselves without even realizing it. They feel him getting distant. Every instinct screams at them to close that gap, to reach out more, to check in, to ask if everything's okay, to remind him of all the reasons they're great together. And by doing exactly that, they destroy the only space where missing someone can actually exist. Let me be really direct about something. When a man starts pulling away, there's always a reason. Maybe he's processing his feelings about the relationship. Maybe something stressful is happening in another area of his life. Maybe he's subconsciously testing to see how you'll react. Maybe his interest level genuinely isn't that high. Whatever the reason, your response to his withdrawal will determine absolutely everything that happens from that point forward. The instinct to chase, to pursue, to close the distance makes complete sense emotionally. When we feel something slipping away, the natural human response is to grip tighter. But when it comes to romantic dynamics with men, that instinct leads you in exactly the wrong direction. The tighter you hold, the faster he pulls away. The more space you allow, the more he starts to wonder why you're not chasing him. Here's exactly what I recommend. The moment you sense him pulling back, pull back even further. Not as revenge, not to punish him, but as a natural mirror of his energy. He creates a little distance. You create more. He sends one text where he used to send 5. You send one back. He goes quiet for 2 days. You go quiet for 3 or 4. Not because you're calculating, but because you're naturally matching his level of investment while genuinely focusing on other areas of your life. This approach is powerful for 2 distinct reasons. First, it completely prevents you from coming across as desperate or overinvested. You're simply mirroring his energy, which communicates that you're equally invested, not more. That equal footing is crucial for maintaining attraction. Second, it forces him to sit with your absence. For possibly the first time in your dynamic, he's not receiving your energy and attention. The emotional supply he's been getting, even if he's been taking it completely for granted, suddenly stops flowing. And in that silence, something very interesting begins to happen. At first, he probably won't consciously register what feels different, but gradually, your absence starts to make itself known. I haven't heard from her today. Then, I wonder what she's up to. Then, wait, why hasn't she texted me? She usually reaches out by now. This is the exact moment when the entire emotional dynamic flips. He went from being the one pulling away, the person in the power position, to being the one wondering why you're not pursuing him. And in that wondering, that confusion, is precisely where longing begins to take root. But here's the crucial part. You cannot be the one who breaks first. If you pull back and then crack after 2 or 3 days with a, "Hey stranger, just wanted to check in," you've revealed that the space wasn't real. You've confirmed that no matter how he acts, you'll always be there waiting. The real power in this move comes from your genuine willingness to let the space be real, to actually let him go, if that's where the space leads. Because sometimes when you stop chasing, people just keep walking away. And as painful as that might be, that's incredibly valuable information. That's clarity. That's protection from continuing to invest your time and emotions into something that was never going to give you what you want. But more often than not, especially when there was genuine connection and chemistry between you, the space does exactly what it's supposed to do. The silence becomes deafening. Your absence becomes a presence of its own. And he reaches out, not because you manipulated him into it, but because he genuinely started to miss what you brought into his life. Let me tell you about Sarah. She'd been dating a man for about 4 months. Everything seemed to be going well. Lots of chemistry, great conversations, fun dates. Then, almost overnight, he started becoming noticeably distant. His texts got shorter and less frequent. She could feel it. That sinking feeling in your stomach when someone's slowly fading. Her instinct was to address it directly. Bring it up, ask what changed, try to fix whatever was breaking. But something stopped her. She'd been in this position before, and she'd learned the hard way that trying to hold on to someone who's actively pulling away usually accelerates their exit. So she made a different choice. She stopped initiating contact completely. When he did text her, she'd respond. But she kept her replies brief. She didn't suggest plans or try to lock down when they'd see each other next. She simply matched the energy he was giving her and redirected all her focus back to her own life. She started making plans with friends she'd been neglecting. She dove into a creative project she'd been putting off for months. She went to events by herself and genuinely enjoyed it, not as a performance for anyone watching, but because she was reconnecting with herself. The first week was complete radio silence from him. She told me later it was genuinely difficult. Every single day she wanted to reach out. Every day she had to consciously choose to focus on herself instead. But something unexpected started happening. She was genuinely starting to enjoy having her space back. Without the constant low-level anxiety of wondering when he'd text or whether she'd done something wrong, she felt lighter. She was reconnecting with parts of herself that had gotten lost. And that version of herself, the one who existed independently of his attention and validation, was, honestly, pretty remarkable. Then, right around the 2-week mark, her phone lit up. Not with a lazy hey, but with a genuine, thoughtful message. He wanted to take her out to dinner, a real plan. She didn't respond immediately. She waited until later that evening and said she was free later in the week. When they finally met up, his energy was completely different, more attentive, more present, more engaged. He actually addressed the distance that had developed between them, something she had never pushed him to do or even mentioned. He explained that work had been incredibly stressful and he'd pulled back from pretty much everything in his life. But her absence, not hearing from her, made him realize he didn't want to lose what they were building. What matters most about Sarah's story is this. She didn't gloat. She didn't deliver a lecture about how his behavior affected her. She simply listened and then paid close attention to his actions moving forward. And those actions did change. He showed up more consistently. He made her a priority. He put in real effort. The shift didn't happen because she convinced him of her value through words. It happened because she demonstrated her value through her willingness to walk away rather than accept breadcrumbs. Now let me tell you about Monica. She'd been in an established relationship for over a year when her boyfriend gradually started taking her completely for granted. He canceled plans at the last minute with weak excuses. He stopped putting in effort or planning anything thoughtful. He assumed she'd always be there, no matter what. She tried having direct conversations about it multiple times, clearly expressing how his behavior made her feel. Nothing changed, so she stopped talking and started acting differently. She booked a weekend trip with her girlfriends without consulting him or even mentioning it until a week before she left. She started saying no to last-minute plans. She stopped being the person who always initiated date nights or worked to keep romance alive in the relationship. She pulled her energy back and reinvested it in herself. The first couple of weeks were tense. He was visibly confused by the shift, but didn't say anything directly. Then one evening, he finally asked if something was wrong between them. Her response was beautifully simple. "Nothing's wrong. I'm just making sure I'm happy and taking care of myself." No accusations, no list of grievances. just a calm, clear statement that her happiness was her own responsibility and her priority. Within a month, the dynamic had shifted entirely. He started planning actual dates again. He became more affectionate and attentive. He stopped taking her presence for granted because he could genuinely feel, probably for the first time in a long time, that her staying wasn't guaranteed. Both Sarah and Monica did fundamentally the same thing. They stopped making someone else the absolute center of their emotional universe. They stopped trying to earn love through constant effort and accommodation and started requiring it through having actual standards. And both had already decided internally that they would genuinely be okay either way. They weren't bluffing. That's where the authentic power comes from. Now let's talk about the ways you can completely destroy all the power you've built through your absence. Because this approach is so effective that when it fails, it's almost always because of one of these critical mistakes. Mistake number 1, announcing your withdrawal in advance. The second you say, "I need space," or "I'm going to step back for a while," you've transformed your absence from something authentic into an obvious strategy. Genuine space doesn't require an announcement. It's simply the natural result of you focusing your energy on your own life. If he notices the change and brings it up, that's different. But leading with an announcement turns your absence into a negotiation tactic, and that destroys the entire effect. Mistake number 2, being physically absent but digitally present. You cannot claim to be creating space while simultaneously watching every story he posts and liking his photos within minutes. Your online activity is energy. It leaves visible traces. Real effective absence means he genuinely doesn't know what you're doing, where you are, or whether you're thinking about him. That uncertainty is where the actual power lives. Mistake number 3, pulling back as punishment. There's a massive difference between healthy emotional boundaries and the passive-aggressive silent treatment. One comes from genuine self-respect. The other comes from being hurt and wanting him to feel it. He can sense this difference even if he can't articulate it. If your internal energy while withdrawing is, "I'll show him," you're still making everything about him. If your energy is, "I'm genuinely choosing myself," that's when the real shift occurs. Mistake number 4, breaking your silence with late-night messages. All the power you've carefully built evaporates the moment you reach out from a place of loneliness or weakness. No, "I miss you" texts at 2 a.m. No, "just thinking about you" messages on a lonely Friday night. Your silence needs to be complete and consistent for it to be genuine. Mistake number 5, manufacturing jealousy. Posting pictures with other men, talking about dates you're supposedly going on, trying to trigger his jealousy through obvious tactics. This is transparent and, frankly, desperate. Authentic power doesn't try to create jealousy artificially. It simply lives life so fully that other people naturally enter your world. There's a huge difference between living your life and performing it for an audience of one. And the biggest mistake of all, not actually building a fulfilling life during the space you create. If you're sitting at home alone, staring at your phone, forcing yourself not to text him while your entire emotional world still revolves around whether he'll reach out, you're missing the point entirely. The space you create is supposed to be filled with your actual life, your interests, your friendships, your personal growth, your joy. If the space is just empty silence and waiting, you're not creating healthy distance. You're just torturing yourself. The way to avoid all of these mistakes is quite simple. Make the withdrawal authentic. Actually invest deeply in your own life. Actually build things that matter to you. Create a daily existence so genuinely engaging that checking your phone becomes something you do occasionally, not constantly. When you do that, your entire energy changes. You're not performing absence, you're living presence, just not with him at the center.